Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his massive command ship, the Destroyer of Worlds. His three eyes focused on the small blue planet floating in the darkness ahead. Earth looked so peaceful from here, like a tiny marble that he could crush between his claws. "This is the world that refuses to pay tribute?" he asked his second-in-command. "Yes, Admiral. The humans have ignored 17 demands for payment. The Emperor grows tired of their silence." Kextar made a sound that was like laughter, but colder. The Zephyrian Empire ruled most of the galaxy. They had crushed 1,000 worlds and made slaves of 1,000,000 species. These humans would learn their place, just like all the others. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. His science officer, Vexman, checked his readings. "Very few, sir. Maybe 50 small patrol boats. Some old satellites around their planet. Nothing that could stop us." "What about their weapons?" "Basic fusion. Rockets, simple laser cannons. Their technology is hundreds of years behind ours." Vexman looked up from his screen. "Sir, they are like children playing with sticks while we carry plasma swords." Far below on the planet's surface, Captain Jake Mitchell sat in the control room of Luna Base. The moon base was humanity's first line of defense, but Jake knew it would not be enough. Through his window, he could see the alien ships hanging in space like dark clouds. "How many?" he asked his communications officer. 200 ships, sir. Maybe more coming behind them." Jake felt his stomach drop. Earth's entire space fleet had only 47 ships, and most of those were old cargo haulers with guns bolted on the sides. The aliens had brought enough firepower to turn every city on Earth into glass. "Send word to General Rodriguez," Jake said. "Tell him the guests have arrived." Deep underground in Colorado, Dr. Lisa Brooks watched the same alien fleet on her screens. The bunker around her was filled with computers and monitors, all showing different views of space around Earth. She was not afraid. In fact, she was almost smiling. "They look confident," said General Frank Rodriguez as he walked up behind her. "Too confident," Lisa replied. "Look how they're flying. No formations, no shields raised. They think we're going to roll over and give up. Maybe we should let them keep thinking that." Lisa turned to look at the general. Frank Rodriguez had been planning for this day for 30 years. They both had, ever since the first refugees had arrived from the outer worlds, warning about the empire that was coming. "The Kethalari were right," Lisa said. "The Empire always does this. They send a big fleet to scare new worlds into giving up without a fight. Well, they're about to learn that humans don't scare easy." Up on the New Horizon space station, Commander Ryan Parker was busy sending messages. To anyone watching, the messages looked like panicked calls for help sent to different human colonies. The aliens were reading every word, just like Ryan wanted them to. "Message sent to Titan Base," his communications officer reported. "Good. Now send one to the Mars colonies. Make it sound desperate." The officer looked confused. "Sir, shouldn't we actually be calling for help?" Ryan smiled. "We are, just not the kind of help the aliens expect." Back on the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Kextar was reading all the human messages. They were exactly what he expected to see. Panic, fear, desperate calls to colonies that were too far away to help. "Sir," Vexman said, "I'm picking up some strange readings." "What kind of readings?" "I'm not sure. There seem to be energy signatures out there, but they keep disappearing when I try to focus on them." Kextar waved a claw dismissively. "Probably they're primitive sensors acting up. Or maybe they're trying to make us think they have more ships than they do." "Should I investigate further?" "No. We have enough firepower here to glass their entire world. Even if they have twice as many ships as we think, it won't matter." The Admiral turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare to fire a warning shot. Destroy one of their satellites. Let them see what real power looks like." But as the Zephyrian ships moved into attack position, something impossible began to happen. The empty space around Earth started to shimmer and bend, like heat waves rising from hot ground. "Sir!" Vexman's voice was high with alarm. "Those energy readings are getting stronger." "What are you talking about?" "There's something out there. Something big." Admiral Kextar looked at his screens just as the shimmering reached its peak. The empty space in front of his fleet was not empty at all. Something huge was becoming visible, like a ghost becoming solid. The human ship that appeared before them was larger than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. It was 12 kilometers long, covered in weapons that the Admiral had never seen before. Its hull gleamed with metals that didn't exist in the Empire's technology files. "Impossible," Kextar whispered. The massive ship hung in space like a sleeping giant waking up. Along its sides, hundreds of launch bays were opening. Inside those bays, the Admiral could see smaller ships that looked more advanced than his own. Flagship. "Sir," Vexman said, his voice shaking, "that ship's power output is 10 times greater than our entire fleet combined." On the bridge of the newly revealed Supercarrier, Captain Amy Stewart looked out at the Zephyrian fleet with calm eyes. Around her, 3,000 crew members worked at stations that would have made the Empire's best engineers weep with envy. "Open. A channel," she said. Her communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Captain." Amy's voice carried across space to every ship in the alien fleet. "This is Captain Amy Stewart of the USS Leviathan. You are in violation of Terran space. You have 30 seconds to withdraw, or we will consider your presence an act of war. Admiral." Kextar stared at his screens in shock. The readings made no sense. The human ship was showing technology that was centuries ahead of anything the Empire possessed. But that was impossible. His scouts had watched this world for years. The humans were primitive. They barely had fusion power. "Sir." "His weapons." Officer said, "What are your orders?" Kextar's mind raced. This had to be a trick. Maybe the humans had found some ancient alien technology, or maybe they were using holograms to make their ship look bigger than it really was. "All ships," he commanded, "prepare to attack. Don't let them fool you with their illusions." But even as he gave the order, Admiral Kextar felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. For the first time in his life, the great admiral of the Zephyrian Empire was afraid. The space around Earth continued to shimmer and twist. More shapes began to appear as invisible barriers fell away. What the Zephyrians had thought was empty space was actually full of human ships, all hidden by technology that made them completely invisible. Admiral Kextar watched in growing horror as ship after ship materialized around his fleet. These were not the crude patrol boats his scouts had reported. These vessels were sleek and deadly, their hulls glowing with energy patterns he had never seen before. "How many ships are appearing?" he demanded. Vexman's hands shook as he worked his controls. "I count 50 so far, sir. No, wait, 70. They keep appearing everywhere I look." On the bridge of the USS Leviathan, Captain Amy Stewart stood calmly watching the alien fleet. Her crew worked quietly around her, each person knowing exactly what to do. They had trained for this moment for years. "Lieutenant Commander Davis," she said to her tactical officer, "what's the status of the alien fleet?" Paul Davis checked his screens. "They're in complete disarray, Captain. Their formations are breaking apart. Some ships are trying to retreat, but others are moving forward to attack positions." "And our fleet?" "All ships report ready for combat. The cloaking systems worked perfectly. They never saw us coming." Captain Stewart nodded. "Good. Open a channel." To Dr. Brooks. Deep in her underground bunker, Dr. Lisa Brooks smiled as Amy's face appeared on her screen. Behind Lisa, dozens of technicians monitored systems that most people on Earth didn't even know existed. "Hello, Amy," Lisa said. "I trust everything is going according to plan." "Better than we hoped," Amy replied. "The aliens are completely shocked. They have no idea what they're really facing. How long until they figure it out?" "Not long. Their sensors are already starting to analyze our technology. But by then, it won't matter." Lisa turned to General Rodriguez, who was standing nearby. "Frank, are you ready to tell them the truth?" The general smiled grimly. "I've been ready for 30 years. Back on the alien command ship, Admiral Kextar was getting more bad news every second. His science officer was running scan after scan, and each one made their situation look worse. "Sir," Vexman said, "I've analyzed the human flagship. Its power core is unlike anything in our database. The energy output is impossible by our understanding of physics." "What about their weapons?" "I can't identify them. The weapon systems are completely unknown." but the energy signatures suggest they could destroy our largest ships with a single shot. Kextar felt his confidence crumbling. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered the galaxy by always having the best technology. They had never faced an enemy with better weapons than their own. There has to be an explanation, he said. Scan for other alien ships. Maybe the humans have allies we don't know about. But the scans showed only human vessels. Whatever technology they were using, it was their own. On Earth, President Helen Carter sat in the Oval Office watching the confrontation in space through a secure video link. Next to her sat the Secretary of Defense and the head of the CIA. All three were calm, despite watching the most important moment in human history. Dr. Brooks, the president said into her communicator. Is it time? Lisa's voice came back immediately. Yes, Madam President. I think our guests are ready to learn the truth. President Carter nodded. Do it. The transmission that went out from Earth was not aimed at the Zephyrian fleet. Instead, it was broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy, reaching every world and every species that had the technology to receive it. People of the galaxy, President Carter's voice said. This is President Helen Carter of Earth. For too long, the Zephyrian Empire has ruled through fear and violence. They have enslaved peaceful worlds and destroyed those who refused to submit. Today, that changes. Admiral Kextar received the transmission along with everyone else. As he listened, his worst fears began to come true. 100 years ago, the president continued, refugees from the Empire's expansion reached our world. The Kethalari people warned us that the Empire would come for us eventually. They shared their knowledge and their technology, and we began to prepare. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Chief Engineer Karen White monitored the ship's power systems. The advanced reactors hummed with energy that could power entire planets. Around her, technicians operated controls that combined human engineering with alien science in ways that created something entirely new. Captain, she reported, all systems operating at peak efficiency. The hybrid technology is working perfectly. Captain Stewart nodded. Good. We're going to need every advantage we can get. The president's broadcast continued. We did not build these ships to conquer. We built them to defend. Not just ourselves, but all the free peoples of the galaxy who refused to bow to tyranny. Admiral Kextar finally understood the truth. The humans had not just found some ancient alien technology. They had taken the knowledge of refugees and improved upon it. They had spent a century building a fleet that could challenge the Empire itself. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving surrender requests from some of our own ships. What? Several captains are asking permission to withdraw. They say fighting these humans would be suicide. Kextar looked at his screens again. The human ships were moving into perfect attack formations. Their movements were precise and coordinated in a way that spoke of years of training and preparation. But it was not just their technology that frightened him. It was their patience. They had hidden their true strength for 100 years, waiting for exactly the right moment to reveal it. That kind of planning and discipline was more dangerous than any weapon. Sir, Vexmin said quietly. What are your orders? Admiral Kextar stared at the human fleet surrounding his own ships. For the first time in his career, he was completely outmatched. The Empire had taught him to crush the weak and fear the strong. Looking at the USS Leviathan and its escort fleet, he realized he was no longer the strong one. The galaxy was about to change forever, and the Zephyrian Empire's long reign of terror was about to face its greatest challenge. The humans had revealed their hand, and it was stronger than anyone had imagined possible. The first sign of what was coming appeared as tiny lights emerging from the USS Leviathan's launch bays. Admiral Kextar watched these lights on his screen, expecting to see the crude atmospheric fighters that his scouts had reported from their observations of Earth. Instead, what emerged made his blood run cold. The human fighters were like nothing in the Empire's files. They moved through space with impossible grace, their sleek forms cutting through the darkness like silver arrows. Each one was smaller than a Zephyrian fighter, but they radiated power signatures that rivaled his escort ships. Those are not atmospheric craft, Vexmin reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Sir, Those fighters are more advanced than our own interceptors. Commander Steve Walsh led the first squadron of fighters away from the Leviathan. In his cockpit, displays showed him everything he needed to know about the enemy fleet. Behind him, 24 other pilots followed in perfect formation. "Razor Squadron, this is Razor 1, he said into his communicator. "Remember, this is a demonstration, not a massacre. We show them what we can do, then we give them a chance to leave." "Copy that, Razor 1, came the reply from Captain Nicole Barnes, his second in command. "Target the outer ships first?" "That's the plan. Let's give these aliens something to think about." The human fighters accelerated toward the Zephyrian fleet at speeds that should have been impossible for such small craft. Admiral Kextar ordered his own fighters to intercept. But what happened next defied everything he knew about space combat. The human fighters simply disappeared. "Where did they go?" Kextar demanded. "I don't know, sir." Vexman frantically worked his controls. "They were there 1 second and then they just vanished." The fighters had not actually disappeared. They had activated phase generators that allowed them to slip partially out of normal space. To the Zephyrian sensors, they no longer existed, but they could still see and target everything around them. Steve Walsh smiled as his fighter passed right through a Zephyrian shield barrier without triggering any alarms. The phase technology was one of humanity's greatest breakthroughs, developed from theories that even the Kethalari refugees had thought impossible. "Razor Squadron, weapons free," he commanded. The human fighters rematerialized right inside the Zephyrian defensive perimeter. Their weapons were not the simple lasers or missiles that the Empire expected. Instead, they fired concentrated beams of energy that cut through alien armor like hot knives through butter. 3 Zephyrian escort ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The destruction was so complete that there was nothing left but glowing particles drifting in space. "Impossible!" Admiral Kextar shouted. "Our shields are supposed to stop everything." "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the human fighters somehow passed right through our barriers. I don't understand how. They did it." On the bridge of the Leviathan, Captain Amy Stewart watched the fighter attack with calm satisfaction. The demonstration was going exactly as planned. Her communications officer turned to her with a message. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." President Carter's face appeared on the main screen. Even through the secure channel, Amy could see the weight of responsibility in the president's eyes. "Captain Stewart," the president said, "you are authorized to proceed with Demonstration Protocol Omega." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. Protocol Omega was the display of the Leviathan's main weapons. It was designed to show any enemy exactly how outmatched they were, without actually starting a full war. "Understood, Madam President," Amy replied. "We'll make sure they get the message." She turned to her weapons officer, Commander Tony Garcia. "Tony, charge the main rail cannon array." Tony's hands moved over his controls with practiced precision. Deep in the ship's hull, massive weapons systems began to hum with power. The rail cannons were humanity's answer to the Empire's plasma weapons, but they were far more destructive than anything the aliens had ever seen. "Charging complete, Captain," Tony reported. "Gravitational manipulation systems are online. We're ready to fire." Captain Stewart looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was still reeling from the fighter attack, trying to reorganize their formations. It was time to show them that the fighters were just the beginning. "Target the 3 ships on the outer edge of their formation," she ordered. "Fire when ready." The USS Leviathan's main guns fired with a sound that seemed to shake the fabric of space itself. But these were not ordinary projectiles. Each shell was accelerated to incredible speeds and wrapped in a gravitational field that warped space around it. When the shells hit their targets, they did not simply explode. They created tiny black holes that consumed the Zephyrian ships completely, then collapsed in on themselves in cascades of energy that destroyed everything within 1,000 kilometers. Admiral Kextar watched 3 of his ships simply vanish from existence. Where they had been, space itself seemed to twist and bend before returning to normal. The weapons that had done this were beyond his understanding of physics. "Sir," Vexmian whispered, "those weren't just explosions. Those were controlled gravitational collapses. The humans have weaponized black holes." At the same time, Captain Jake Mitchell on Luna Base was receiving new orders from General Rodriguez. the primitive defense satellites that orbited Earth, were beginning to change. Their outer shells fell away to reveal weapons platforms that had been hidden for decades. "All defense platforms, this is Luna Base," Jake transmitted. "You are authorized to reveal your true capabilities." Around Earth, hundreds of satellites transformed from simple communication devices into weapons that could crack moons in half. Each one had been disguised as obsolete technology, while actually containing some of humanity's most advanced systems. The Zephyrian fleet found itself surrounded not just by the human battle fleet, but by a defense network that made their position completely hopeless. Every direction they could retreat was blocked by weapons that could destroy their largest ships. "Admiral," his communications officer said urgently, "we're receiving surrender signals from half our fleet. The captains are requesting permission to withdraw immediately." Kextar looked at his tactical display. The human fighters were still buzzing around his remaining ships like deadly insects. The massive carrier hung in space like a sleeping giant, its weapons still charged and ready to fire again. And now Earth itself was revealed to be a fortress that could defend itself against any attack. He had brought 200 ships to intimidate a primitive world. Instead, he had discovered a civilization that possessed technology that made the mighty Zephyrian Empire look like children playing with toys. "Sir," Vexman said quietly, "your orders." Admiral Kextar realized that everything he had believed about the galaxy was wrong. The Empire was not the strongest force in known space. These humans, who had seemed so weak and helpless, had been quietly building the most powerful military force he had ever encountered. For the first time in his long career, the great Admiral Kextar prepared to do something he had never done before. He prepared to retreat. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, aliens who had never heard of Earth suddenly learned that the mighty Zephyrian Empire had been defeated by a species they thought was primitive. Emperor Zexthor sat on his crystal throne on the world of Zephyr Prime, watching the recordings of the battle over and over again. His advisors stood in silence around him, none daring to speak first. "Show me the weapons analysis again," the Emperor finally said. His chief scientist, a being called Nexquill, activated a holographic display. "Your Majesty, our experts have studied the human technology for days. We cannot explain how they created weapons that manipulate gravity itself, and their fighters, they use some form of phase shifting that allows them to pass through our shields as if they do not exist. Our defensive systems are completely useless against them." Emperor Zexthor had ruled the galaxy for over 200 years. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed entire civilizations, and made himself the most feared being in known space. But now, for the first time, he felt something he had not experienced since he was young: uncertainty. "How many ships did we lose?" Admiral Kextar retreated with only half his fleet. Nexquill replied, "The humans could have destroyed them all, but they chose to let them escape. That was perhaps the most frightening part of all. The humans had not won through desperate fighting or lucky accidents. They had demonstrated complete control over the battle, showing exactly how much power they possessed before choosing to show mercy. Meanwhile, across human space, the revelation was having immediate effects. Admiral Sandra Cooper commanded the Terran Deep Space Fleet from her flagship, the USS Yorktown. She had been hiding with her ships near the edge of the solar system, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving messages from Zephyrian commanders throughout the sector. They're all requesting immediate withdrawal to avoid conflicts with human forces." Sandra smiled. "Any word from the outer colonies?" "Commander Greg Thompson reports that alien traders are arriving at his station every hour, offering deals and asking for protection. Species that have never spoken to humans before are suddenly very interested in being our friends." The political changes were happening even faster than the military ones. Species that had been conquered by the Empire centuries ago were suddenly seeing hope for the first time in generations. On the world of Altair 7, Ambassador Veltara of the Altarian Confederation called an emergency meeting of her council. The Altarians had been fighting a losing war against the Empire for 50 years, slowly being pushed back to their home system. "The humans have done what we thought was impossible," she told the assembled leaders. They have made the Empire afraid. But can we trust them? Asked General Mordek, the Confederation's military commander. How do we know they will not become the new Empire? Veltara had been wondering the same thing, but the recordings of the battle told her something important. Look at how they fought. They could have destroyed the entire Zephyrian fleet, but they chose not to. They showed their power, then offered mercy. That is not the behavior of conquerors. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Earth. Tell them the Altarian Confederation wishes to discuss an alliance. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Brooks was buried in her underground bunker, coordinating with human forces across the galaxy. The screens around her showed the locations of dozens of hidden human ships, each one more advanced than anything the Empire possessed. The Kethalari are finally coming out of hiding, General, Rodriguez reported as he entered the control room. Elder Korthak wants to meet with our leadership. Lisa nodded. The Kethalari refugees had been humanity's secret teachers for a century. They had shared their technology and warned of the Empire's coming, but they had remained hidden even from most humans. Where are they? They've been living in underground cities on the moons of Jupiter. Korthak says they have information about Zephyrian military installations that could change the balance of power permanently. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Elder Korthak stood in a chamber carved from ice and rock. Around him, thousands of his people prepared to emerge from their hiding places for the first time in 100 years. The Kethalari looked almost human, but with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They were the survivors of one of the Empire's first conquests, refugees who had fled across the galaxy to find safety. For too long, we have hidden while the Empire grew stronger, Korthak said to his assembled people. But now the humans have shown that the Empire can be defeated. It is time for us to stand with our allies and help free the galaxy. His aide, a young Kethalari named Silvera, approached with a datapad. Elder, we have compiled all our intelligence on Zephyrian military positions, their fleet bases, their weapon factories, their command centers. Everything we learned before our world fell. Korthak took the datapad and smiled sadly. His people had paid a terrible price for this information, but now it could serve a noble purpose. On Zephyr Prime, Emperor Zexthor was dealing with the immediate consequences of the defeat. Reports were coming in from across the empire of rebellions and uprisings. Species that had been quiet for centuries were suddenly finding their courage. Your Majesty, his military commander reported, the Rigelian system has declared independence. The Procyon colonies are refusing to pay tribute, and the Vegan Federation is mobilizing its fleet. What about our own forces? Many of our commanders are requesting transfers away from human territory. Morale is at its lowest point in Empire history. The Emperor stood and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. For 200 years, that city had been the center of galactic power. Now it felt like the center of a crumbling empire. Summon the War Council, he ordered. If we cannot defeat the humans through conventional means, we will have to try something else. But even as he gave the order, Emperor Zexthor knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had seen that the mighty empire could be defeated. The fear that had held his realm together for centuries was beginning to crack. On Earth, Captain Amy Stewart stood on the observation deck of the USS Leviathan, looking out at the stars. Around her ship, the human fleet maintained its defensive positions ready for whatever came next. Her communications officer approached with a message. Captain, we're receiving diplomatic requests from 47 different species. They all want to establish relations with Earth. Amy nodded. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had expected. Humanity had revealed its hidden strength not to conquer, but to protect. Now they would have to live up to that promise. Age of the Zephyrian Empire was ending and something new was beginning. The question was whether humanity was ready for the responsibility that came with their newfound power. 6 months after the battle at Earth, the USS Leviathan led a massive fleet toward the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. But this was not an invasion force coming to destroy. It was a diplomatic mission backed by enough firepower to ensure that negotiations would be taken seriously. Captain Amy Stewart, now promoted to admiral, stood on the bridge watching the Imperial capital world grow larger on her screens. Around her flagship, 60 other human vessels maintained perfect formation. Each ship was a marvel of technology that made the Empire's greatest warships look like antiques. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Zephyr Prime. Emperor Zexthor is requesting a meeting." Amy smiled. "Tell His Imperial Majesty that we accept. We'll meet on neutral ground." The neutral ground was a space station that had been built specifically for this meeting. It hung in space halfway between the human fleet and the Imperial capital, a symbol of the new era that was beginning. Emperor Zexthor arrived with a small escort of his finest ships, but as his shuttle approached the station, he could see human vessels everywhere. They had not come to this meeting as supplicants asking for mercy. They had come as equals, demanding respect. Inside the station, the meeting room was simple but elegant. On one side sat the Emperor with his advisors. On the other side sat Admiral Stewart representing humanity, General Rodriguez appearing by hologram from Earth, and President Carter joining by secure video link. But the humans were not alone. Elder Korthak of the Kethlari sat with them, along with Ambassador Veltara of the Altarian Confederation and representatives from a dozen other species that had joined what was being called the Free Worlds Alliance. "Your Majesty," President Carter began, "we are not here to destroy your empire. We are here to ensure that the age of conquest and slavery comes to an end." Emperor Zexthor looked around the table at faces representing species he had thought were defeated forever. The Kethlari, who his forces had supposedly wiped out, the Altarians, who should have been crushed years ago, and the humans, who had turned out to be the most dangerous opponents his empire had ever faced. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. Admiral Stewart leaned forward. "All conquered species will be granted immediate independence. The Empire will withdraw to its original 20 systems, and you will participate in a new galactic council where no single species holds dominance over others. And if we refuse," General Rodriguez spoke from his hologram, "then we will dismantle your empire piece by piece until you have no choice but to agree." It was not an idle threat. Over the past 6 months, human technology had spread to their new allies. The Altarians now had ships that could challenge Zephyrian dreadnoughts. The Kethlari had built weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Dozens of other species were arming themselves with human-designed systems. The Emperor looked at his advisors, but he could see in their eyes that they knew the truth. The Empire was finished as a galactic power. They could accept these terms and keep their core worlds, or they could fight and lose everything. "What guarantee do we have that you will not simply replace us as the new rulers?" Zexthor asked. "President," Carter answered, "because that was never our goal. We revealed our strength not to conquer the galaxy, but to ensure that no one could conquer it again." Dr. Lisa Brooks, watching from her bunker on Earth, smiled as she heard those words. It had taken a century of preparation, but humanity had achieved something that had seemed impossible. They had ended the cycle of galactic empires. 3 hours later, the agreement was signed. The Zephyrian Empire would release all conquered territories and participate in the new Galactic Council as equals among many species. In return, they would keep their original worlds and their lives. As news of the agreement spread across the galaxy, celebrations broke out on 1,000 worlds. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were suddenly free. The great fear that had hung over the galaxy for so long was finally lifted. On Earth, Captain Jake Mitchell watched from Luna Base as ships from dozens of different worlds arrived to establish embassies. The planet that had once seemed so isolated was now becoming the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. Commander Ryan Parker, now promoted to Admiral of the Sol Defense Fleet, coordinated the traffic with practiced efficiency. "Admiral Mitchell," he said into his communicator, "we have the Rigelian ambassador requesting permission to land." "Permission granted," Jake replied. "And Ryan, it's good to see our plans finally working out." The plans had been in motion for 100 years. Ever since the first Kethalari refugees had arrived with their warnings about the Empire, humanity had spent that century not just building ships and weapons, but learning how to be responsible with power. Elder Korthak stood in the new embassy complex in Geneva, looking out at representatives from species across the galaxy. His people had suffered terribly under the Empire, but their sacrifice had not been in vain. Elder, his aide Silvera said, the first session of the Galactic Council begins tomorrow. Good, Korthak replied. It is time to build something better than what came before. The first Galactic Council meeting was held in a great hall built specifically for the purpose. Representatives from over 200 species sat together as equals for the first time in galactic history. Dr. Lisa Brooks, now serving as Earth's chief representative, stood to address the assembly. Behind her, the flags of free worlds created a tapestry of colors and symbols that represented the diversity of galactic civilization. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as free beings working together for the good of all. The age of empires is over. The age of cooperation has begun. In the audience, Admiral Amy Stewart sat with the other military leaders who had made this moment possible. The USS Leviathan was parked in orbit above Earth, no longer a weapon of war but a symbol of protection for all free worlds. The supercarrier that had stunned the galaxy by its very existence now served a different purpose. It patrolled the borders of free space, ensuring that no new empire could rise to threaten the peace that had been so hard to win. As the council session continued, representatives discussed trade agreements, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense pacts. The galaxy was learning to work together instead of fighting each other. Emperor Zexthor, now simply called Governor Zexthor of the Zephyrian Republic, sat quietly in his assigned seat. His empire was gone, but his people still had their homes and their freedom. It was more than he had expected when the human fleet had first appeared at his capital. The meeting ended with the signing of the Galactic Charter, a document that guaranteed the rights of all species and established the principles that would guide the galaxy into the future. Later that evening, Admiral Stewart stood once again on the observation deck of the USS Leviathan, looking out at the stars. The galaxy seemed brighter somehow, filled with the lights of free worlds working together. Her communications officer approached with the daily reports. Admiral, all sectors report peaceful. Trade routes are operating normally. And we've received requests from 12 more species wanting to join the alliance. Amy nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction. Humanity had achieved something that many had thought impossible. They had used their hidden strength not to dominate the galaxy, but to free it from domination forever. The supercarrier that had shocked galactic rulers with its power now served as guardian of a new era, watching over the stars to ensure that freedom would never again be threatened by those who sought to rule through fear. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the massive space station grow larger on his screen. He had seen many impressive sights during his 20 years in space, but nothing like this. The station was huge, bigger than Earth's moon, and it sparkled with lights from a dozen different alien races. "Sir, we're getting another message from the station," said Lieutenant Karen Davis from her position at the communications desk. Her voice was nervous, and Jake could understand why. This was humanity's first contact with the Galactic Space Council, and everyone aboard the ship felt the weight of representing their entire species. "Put it through," Jake said, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered and showed a tall, crystal-like being that seemed to glow with its own light. Its voice was cold and mechanical when it spoke. "Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 77 Alpha. Your delegation will be escorted immediately to the council chambers. Do not deviate from your assigned path." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all good people, but they looked worried. He couldn't blame them. "Well, that was friendly," muttered Commander Lisa Carter from beside him. Lisa was Earth's top military strategist and had been chosen to accompany this mission. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Jake had worked with her before and trusted her judgment completely. They didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat, Jake agreed. He turned to his pilot. "Take us in, Lieutenant Ross. Nice and easy." The docking process went smoothly, though Jake noticed the alien technology was far beyond anything humans had developed. The docking clamps moved with perfect precision, and the airlock sealed without even a whisper of escaping air. When the doors opened, they were met by two guards that looked like they were made of living metal. "Follow," one of them said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like grinding gears. Jake, Lisa, and their small diplomatic team followed the guards through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The station was incredible. The walls were made of some kind of material that shifted colors as they walked, and the ceiling showed a perfect view of the stars outside. Other aliens passed them in the hallways, creatures that Jake had only imagined in his wildest dreams. There were beings made of pure energy that floated past like ghosts. Others looked like giant insects walking on their back legs. One group appeared to be living plants that moved with slow, deliberate steps. Each species ignored the humans completely as if they were not worth noticing. "Charming bunch," Lisa whispered to Jake as they walked. The guards led them to a massive chamber with a domed ceiling that showed the swirling colors of the galaxy's center. 12 seats were arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different type of alien. Most of the seats were already occupied. The largest seat held a creature that looked like a mountain of crystal. Its faceted surface reflected the lights in the room, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. This was Speaker Thex Val of the Veltharians, though Jake didn't know that yet. Floating near another seat was a being made of pure energy, constantly shifting between different colors. It had no solid form, but Jake could feel its attention like heat from a fire. This was one of the Zephyrites, creatures that had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. Other aliens filled the remaining seats. Some Jake could understand, like the ones that looked almost human but with blue skin and 4 arms. Others were completely beyond his understanding, like the creature that seemed to be made of living shadow, or the one that appeared to be a collection of floating geometric shapes. "Humans," the crystal being spoke, and its voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You stand before the Galactic Space Council, governing body of civilized space. I am Speaker Thex Val." Jake stepped forward. He had prepared for this moment, practiced his speech dozens of times. "Honored Speaker, I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing the people of Earth. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations with the galactic community." A sound like breaking glass came from the crystal being, and Jake realized it was laughing. Several other aliens made sounds that might have been amusement in their own languages. "You misunderstand your situation, human," Thexval said. "You are not here to establish relations, you are here to answer for your crimes." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Crimes? What crimes?" The energy being spoke next, its voice like wind through a canyon. "You have violated the cosmic non-interference doctrine. Your species has expanded too rapidly, too aggressively through space. You have disturbed the natural order." Lisa stepped up beside Jake. "With respect, we were not aware of any such doctrine. No one told us these rules existed." "Ignorance is not an excuse," said another alien, this one looking like a giant spider made of metal. "Your kind has spread to over 50 star systems in less than 2 centuries. Such rapid expansion is forbidden." Thexval raised one crystal appendage, and the chamber fell silent. "But that is not your greatest crime, humans. We have reports of strange ships in your space, vessels that appear and disappear without using any known form of faster-than-light travel, ships that seem to phase in and out of reality itself." Jake tried to keep his face neutral, but he felt Lisa tense beside him. They both knew what the aliens were talking about, though it was supposed to be humanity's greatest secret. "We demand to know about these void ships," the energy being continued. "What dark technologies have you developed? What forces are you tampering with?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Jake said, though he could hear the lie in his own voice. The crystal being's laugh was like an avalanche. Do not insult our intelligence, human. Our sensors have detected impossible energy signatures in your space. Ships that exist partially outside normal space-time. You will tell us about these dark technologies or face the consequences. Thexval stood, and the chamber filled with a sound like singing crystal. The Galactic Space Council hereby orders humanity to retreat to your home system immediately. You will accept permanent quarantine and cease all space exploration beyond your own star. You have violated laws older than your species, and you will face corrective action if you refuse. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. You're talking about the imprisonment of our entire species. We are talking about maintaining galactic stability, the spider-like alien said. Your kind is dangerous, unpredictable. You have technologies that should not exist. You will comply, or be made to comply, the energy being pulsed brighter. You have 72 standard hours to begin your withdrawal. Any human ships found outside your home system after that time will be destroyed. Lisa stepped forward, her military training taking over. And if we refuse? Thexval's crystal body flared with light. Then the combined fleets of 12 civilizations will ensure your compliance. Do not test our resolve, humans. Species have been eliminated from existence for far less than what you have done. Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces, staring down at them. Some showed curiosity, others contempt, but all showed the same certainty that humanity would bow to their demands. We need time to consider your ultimatum, Jake said carefully. You have 72 hours. Thexval repeated. Use them wisely, this council session is concluded. As the guards escorted them back to their ship, Jake walked in stunned silence. Humanity had reached for the stars only to find they were controlled by powers beyond imagination. But as they reached the docking bay, Lisa touched his arm and whispered 5 words that changed everything. Protocol 7. Prepare the Ghost Fleet. General Ryan Collins sat in his underground office 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. The message from Admiral Carter had arrived 30 minutes ago, and he was still staring at the screen. Protocol 7. Those 2 words meant humanity was facing total destruction. He pressed a button on his desk, and the wall behind him opened to reveal a hidden elevator. Ryan stepped inside and descended even deeper into the mountain. When the doors opened, he walked into a facility that officially did not exist. General Collins, said Dr. Elena Rodriguez as she hurried toward him. Elena was a small woman with tired eyes and gray hair, though she was only 45 years old. The stress of running the Phantom Project had aged her quickly. I got your emergency signal. Is it time? The aliens know about our ghost ships, Ryan said without introduction. They're giving us 3 days to surrender or face complete destruction. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. 20 years of secrecy, and it comes down to this. They walked together through corridors lined with laboratories and testing chambers. Scientists and technicians hurried past them, all working on projects that could change the course of human history. This was Deep Space Command's most classified facility, where humanity's greatest secret had been born. Tell me again how this all started, Ryan said as they reached the main laboratory. Elena smiled sadly. You know the story as well as I do, but I'll tell it anyway. She led him to a large window that looked down into a testing chamber. Inside, a strange black field flickered in and out of existence. 20 years ago, Dr. Nathan Price and I were trying to create a new type of engine. We were working with exotic matter, trying to bend space-time in small ways. Dr. Nathan Price looked up from his computer console and waved at them through the window. He was a tall, thin man who always looked like he had not slept in days. Next, to him, Commander Amy Foster was running calculations on another screen. Amy was a former space pilot who had become an engineer when an accident grounded her from active flight duty. Nathan was running a test on a piece of dark matter we had collected from deep space, Elena continued. The experiment went wrong, or maybe it went exactly right. Instead of destroying the lab, the dark matter created a stable field that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Ryan watched the black field pulse and shift. Even after all these years, it still made him uncomfortable to look at. And that's when you discovered what it could do. We put a probe into the field, Elena said. It disappeared completely from all our sensors, but we could still control it through quantum entanglement. The probe could move through solid matter, like it was not there. It could appear and disappear at will. We had accidentally discovered how to phase objects into dark matter space. They moved to another window that showed a small spacecraft sitting in a testing bay. The ship looked normal except for the strange black coating that covered its hull. The first test flights were disasters, Elena admitted. The pilots experienced severe hallucinations, memory loss, and complete mental breakdowns. We lost 3 good people before we understood what was happening. Ryan remembered those early days. The families asking questions about their missing loved ones. The cover stories about training accidents. The guilt that still kept him awake at night. But then we found the wraiths, Elena continued. People with a specific genetic combination that lets them survive in dark matter space. Only about 1 in 10,000 humans has the right genes, and even then the process is dangerous. Commander Amy Foster left her console and joined them at the window. General Collins, we've been monitoring the situation. Major Sam Torres sent us a report from the outer colonies. He engaged a small alien fleet yesterday. What happened? Ryan asked. Amy's face was grim. Complete defeat. Our best ships, our most advanced weapons, and they destroyed us without even trying. Their energy shield stopped everything we fired at them. Their weapons cut through our armor like paper. Ryan felt his heart sink. He had hoped that conventional human forces might have a chance against the aliens, but Amy's report destroyed that hope. How many ships did Torres lose? He asked. 12 destroyers and 6 cruisers, Amy replied. Torres barely escaped in a damaged frigate. The aliens were playing with us, General. They could have destroyed his entire fleet in minutes if they wanted to. Elena put her hand on Ryan's shoulder. That's why we built the Ghost Fleet. We always knew this day might come. They walked deeper into the facility, past laboratories, where scientists worked on dark matter technology. In one room, researchers studied the psychological effects of dark space exposure. In another, engineers worked on improving the phase generators that allowed ships to enter dark matter space. Show me the pilots, Ryan said. Elena led him to a special wing of the facility where the Wraith pilots lived. These were humanity's most valuable and most damaged people. The genetic modifications and dark matter exposure that allowed them to pilot the ghost ships also changed them in fundamental ways. Major Kate Sullivan sat in a common room, staring at nothing. She was one of the first successful Wraith pilots, but the cost was clear. Her eyes held a distant look, as if she was seeing things that existed in other dimensions. When she spoke, her voice sounded like it was coming from far away. General Collins, she said without looking at him. I can feel them out there, the aliens. Their minds burn so bright in normal space, but they cannot see us when we phase. We are ghosts to them. Ryan sat down across from her. Kate had been a normal fighter pilot once with a husband and 2 children. The dark matter exposure had taken that away from her. Her family could not understand what she had become, and she could no longer relate to people who existed only in normal space. Kate, we need the Ghost Fleet ready to deploy. Can your people handle a full combat mission? Kate's eyes focused on him for a moment, and he saw the woman she used to be. We've been ready for 20 years, General. We knew this was why we were created. To save humanity when no one else could. Other Wraith pilots drifted through the common room like living ghosts. There were only 47 of them in total, each one a volunteer who had given up their humanity to become something else. They moved differently than normal people, as if they were not entirely present in the physical world. Elena watched them with sad eyes. They're our greatest achievement and our greatest tragedy. We created them to save our species, but we had to destroy part of what makes them human to do it. Ryan's communicator buzzed, and President Karen Walsh's face appeared on the screen. She was calling from the White House Situation Room, and he could see the stress on her face. General Collins, what's the status of our secret assets? The Ghost Fleet is ready to deploy, Madam President. 12 ships, each crewed by our best Wraith pilots. They can phase into dark matter space, and become completely invisible to alien sensors. President Walsh was quiet for a long moment. And the cost? Ryan looked at the Wraith pilots around him, these people who had sacrificed their humanity for their species. The cost is everything, Madam President, but it's the only chance we have. Then authorize deployment, she said. May God help us all. As the communication ended, Elena activated the facility's alert system. Throughout the underground complex, lights flashed and alarms sounded. The Ghost Fleet was going to war. Major. Kate Sullivan stood up from her chair, her eyes now sharp and focused. It's time, she said to the other Wraith pilots. Time to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we fight for our survival. Ryan watched as the pilots moved toward their ships, these broken people who had become humanity's last hope. In 12 hours, the Ghost Fleet would reach the Alien Council station. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had secrets darker than they could imagine. The war for human freedom was about to begin, fought by warriors who existed between dimensions, piloting ships that could touch the very fabric of space itself. And somewhere in dark matter space, forces older than civilization were beginning to take notice of the disturbance humanity was about to create. The alien fleets moved through space like a storm of metal and fire. Admiral Fletcher Hayes stood on the bridge of the massive ship Eternal Dominion, watching hundreds of alien vessels form attack formations. He was a tall creature with 4 arms and blue skin, one of the Arctonian race that had served the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years. Report on human military strength, Fletcher ordered his tactical officer. Scans show approximately 200 human vessels scattered across 50 star systems, the officer replied. Primitive nuclear weapons, basic energy shields, and simple railgun technology. They will offer minimal resistance. Fletcher nodded with satisfaction. This would be easier than he had expected. In his long career, he had never seen the Council use overwhelming force against such a weak enemy. 12 different alien species had contributed their best warships to this operation. The humans would surrender quickly once they saw the hopeless nature of their situation. The first target was Proxima Station, humanity's outermost military base. Captain Rick Stone commanded the Human Defense Force there, and he watched the approaching alien fleet with growing dread. His tactical displays showed energy signatures beyond anything in human databases. Sir, we count over 300 alien ships, reported Lieutenant Dan Murphy from the sensor station. They're all showing power readings 10 times higher than our biggest ships. Rick looked around his command center at the faces of his crew. They were scared, but they were ready to fight. These were professional soldiers who knew they were probably going to die, but they would make the aliens pay a price for human space. All ships, this is Captain Stone, he broadcast to his small fleet. We knew this day might come. We're going to show these aliens that humans don't surrender without a fight. For Earth. The battle began badly for the humans. Rick's ships fired everything they had at the approaching aliens, but their nuclear missiles exploded harmlessly against energy shields. The railgun rounds that had torn through asteroid pirates bounced off alien armor like raindrops. The alien response was devastating. Beams of pure energy sliced through human ships like knives through paper. Matter disruptor weapons made entire vessels simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind but empty space. In 20 minutes, Rick's fleet of 30 ships was reduced to burning wreckage. Rick's own ship, the destroyer Courage, was dying around him. Half his crew was dead, and the other half was fighting fires and trying to keep life support running. As alien ships moved in for the final kill, Rick sent one last message to Earth. This is Proxima Station. We have been overrun. The aliens are too strong. Tell Earth we tried our best. Tell them to remember us. Admiral Fletcher watched the destruction of the human fleet with professional interest. The humans had fought bravely, he would give them that. But bravery meant nothing against superior technology. He was already planning the next phase of the operation when his tactical officer made an urgent report. Admiral, we're detecting strange energy readings throughout the fleet. What kind of readings? Fletcher asked. Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match any known technology. They seem to be coming from empty space. Fletcher frowned. His sensors showed nothing but empty space around the fleet. but the energy readings were definitely there. Before he could investigate, further reality itself seemed to tear open. The USS Phantom materialized inside the Eternal Dominion's shields like a ghost becoming solid. Major Kate Sullivan sat in the pilot's chair, her consciousness split between normal space and the dark matter dimension. Her ship existed in both realities simultaneously, allowing it to pass through solid matter like it was not there. "Target locked," she whispered, her voice carrying across dimensions. "Firing dark matter torpedoes." The weapons she fired were not made of normal matter. They were concentrated dark matter given form and purpose, existing partially outside the physical universe. When they struck the Eternal Dominion's core systems, they simply erased everything they touched from existence. Admiral Fletcher had one moment to realize his ship was dying, before the massive dreadnought imploded. The Eternal Dominion, pride, of the Arctonian fleet, folded in on itself and disappeared, leaving behind only confused alien survivors floating in escape pods. Throughout the alien fleet, chaos erupted as 11 more phantom ships appeared from dark matter space. These vessels moved like living shadows, phasing in and out of reality at will. They struck vital systems with surgical precision before vanishing back into the spaces between dimensions. The Veltharian crystal ships tried to fight back, but their energy weapons passed harmlessly through targets that existed partially outside normal space-time. The Zephyrite energy beings attempted to disrupt the phantom ships with their reality manipulation powers, but the dark matter technology was beyond their understanding. Captain Bob Turner piloted the USS Shadow through the heart of a crystalline super dreadnought. His ship's dark matter field allowed it to ignore the alien vessel's shields and armor completely. Bob had been a normal fighter pilot once, but the genetic modifications and dark matter exposure had changed him into something that could navigate spaces that didn't technically exist. "This is Shadow to all ghost ships," he transmitted across quantum channels that only the Wraith pilots could access. "The aliens can't touch us while we're phased. Hit them hard and fast, then fade back into dark space." Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from her underground facility on Earth. Screens around her showed the biometric data from all 12 Wraith pilots, and what she saw worried her deeply. The dark matter exposure was taking its toll faster than expected. Major Kate Sullivan's brain patterns were becoming increasingly erratic. The woman who had once been a loving mother now existed primarily in dark matter space, her consciousness scattered across multiple dimensions. Her thoughts moved at the speed of quantum entanglement, but her humanity was slipping away with each passing minute. "Kate's neural patterns are destabilizing," Dr. Nathan Price reported from his monitoring station. "She's experiencing severe dimensional displacement syndrome. We might lose her completely." Elena watched the data with a heavy heart. Each Wraith pilot was precious, irreplaceable. There were only 47 humans in existence who could pilot the ghost ships, and they were burning out their minds to save their species. "Can we pull her back?" Elena asked. Nathan shook his head. "She's too deep in dark space now. Her consciousness exists more in the dark matter dimension than in our reality. If we try to force her back, we might kill her." On her ship, Kate Sullivan felt her grip on normal reality slipping away. She could see the battle happening in dozens of different timelines simultaneously. In some realities, humanity won. In others, Earth burned under alien bombardment. But in all of them, the Wraith pilots paid the ultimate price for their species' freedom. "I can feel them," she whispered, her voice echoing across dimensions. "The other versions of myself. We're all fighting the same battle in different realities. We're all dying for the same cause." Admiral Fletcher's replacement, a spider-like creature named Commander Vextar, desperately tried to coordinate a defense against enemies that could not be fought with conventional tactics. His ships fired wildly at empty space, hoping to hit the phantom vessels by luck rather than skill. "Deploy the quantum mines," he ordered. "If we can't see them, we'll fill space with enough explosives to destroy anything that moves." But the ghost ships moved through the mines like they were not there, existing in spaces where normal explosives could not reach. The alien fleet found itself fighting shadows, battling enemies that appeared and disappeared without warning. "Lieutenant," Sarah Brooks piloted the USS Wraith through a formation of Zephyrite energy ships. Her vessel's dark matter generators allowed it to absorb the aliens' energy attacks and convert them into power for her own systems. She had been dead for 3 minutes during one dark matter experiment, and the experience had changed her in ways that doctors still did not understand. "This is Wraith to Ghost Leader," she transmitted. "My systems are showing massive energy buildup in the alien fleet. They're preparing something big." Kate Sullivan's fragmented consciousness detected it too. The aliens were charging weapons that had not been used in thousands of years, devices designed to anchor reality itself and force the phantom ships back into normal space-time. "All ghost ships, prepare for emergency phase-out," she ordered, though her voice now sounded like it was coming from very far away. "They're going to try to trap us in normal space." As ancient alien weapons began to distort the fabric of reality around them, the Wraith pilots faced their greatest challenge yet. They had shocked the galaxy with their impossible technology, but now the aliens were fighting back with powers that had conquered civilizations before humans ever looked at the stars. The battle for humanity's survival was just beginning, and the ghosts in the machine were running out of places to hide. Deep space trembled as more alien ships arrived from across the galaxy. These were not the regular council fleets, but ancient vessels that had been sleeping in hidden bases for thousands of years. The Arcanian mind ships looked like living brains, floating in space, their psychic powers reaching across star systems. The crystalline super-dreadnoughts were bigger than space stations, their diamond hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Commander Vextar watched these legendary ships take positions around his battered fleet. He had called for help after losing over half his vessels to the human ghost ships, and the Council had responded by awakening weapons that had not been used since the Great Purge 3,000 years ago. "Activate the reality anchors," he ordered, his communications officer. "If these humans want to hide in dark space, we will drag them back into our reality." Massive devices emerged from the ancient ships, machines that looked like mechanical spiders made of pure crystal. These reality anchors had been designed by the first galactic civilization to prevent other species from using dimensional technology. They sent waves of force through space-time itself, making it impossible for anything to exist partially outside normal reality. Major Kate Sullivan felt the change immediately. Her consciousness, which had been spread across multiple dimensions, suddenly snapped back into her physical body like a rubber band. The pain was incredible, like having her soul torn apart and forced back together. All ghost ships were being pulled back into normal space, she managed to say through gritted teeth. "The aliens have some kind of dimensional lock. We can't phase anymore." The USS Phantom suddenly became solid inside a cluster of alien vessels. Without its dark matter protection, the ship was now vulnerable to enemy weapons. Energy beams struck its hull, and Kate felt her ship dying around her. Other Phantom ships throughout the fleet faced the same problem. Captain Bob Turner's USS Shadow materialized in the middle of an Arcanian mine ship and immediately came under psychic attack. The alien's mental powers invaded his thoughts, trying to drive him insane with visions of terror and despair. Bob screamed as images of Earth burning filled his mind, but his training as a Wraith pilot helped him fight back. Years of existing, partially in dark matter space, had taught him to resist mental invasion. He fired his remaining dark matter torpedoes at point-blank range, destroying both his ship and the alien mine ship in a flash of twisted space-time. On Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched her monitors with growing horror. The biometric readings from the Wraith pilots were showing complete system failures. Their minds, already damaged by dark matter exposure, could not handle being forced back into normal space so violently. "We're losing them," Dr. Nathan Price reported, his voice full of despair. 7 pilots are already brain-dead. The others are experiencing complete neural collapse. Elena stared at the screen showing the vital signs of humanity's greatest heroes. These people had volunteered to give up their humanity to save their species, and now they were dying alone in the cold of space, their minds shattered by forces beyond understanding. Major Kate Sullivan's ship was falling apart, but she managed to send one final transmission back to Earth. Her voice was weak and broken, but her words carried the weight of absolute determination. "Tell them we paid the price for freedom in blood and souls," she whispered. Tell them we chose this fate willingly because humanity deserves to reach for the stars. But even as the ghost fleet died, something else was stirring in the depths of space. The reality anchors were sending waves through dimensions that had been quiet for millions of years, and ancient systems were beginning to respond. Commander Amy Foster, monitoring the battle from a research station near Jupiter, suddenly detected massive energy signatures appearing throughout the galaxy. Her instruments showed objects the size of moons moving at impossible speeds heading toward the battle. "Dr. Rodriguez, you need to see this," she called over the communication system. "Something big is coming. Multiple contacts, all showing energy readings that don't make sense." Elena looked at Amy's data and felt her blood turn cold. The signatures were unlike anything in human or alien databases, but they all shared one common element. They were partially composed of dark matter, just like the Phantom ships. The first of the ancient constructs arrived at the battle site like a mountain of black metal and crystal. It was larger than any ship ever built, its surface covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. This was a Dark Sentinel, one of the automated guardians left behind by the predecessors, the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization. Speaker Thexaval, watching the battle from the safety of the council station, felt fear for the first time in centuries. His crystalline body actually trembled as he recognized what was approaching. "Impossible," he whispered. "The Dark Sentinels have been dormant for 3 million years. What could have awakened them?" The answer came from his science officer, a floating geometric shape that served as the station's chief analyst. "The human dark matter technology, Speaker. Our reality anchors have created dimensional disturbances across half the galaxy. The Sentinels detect this as a threat to universal stability." More Dark Sentinels emerged from hyperspace, their ancient hulls scarred by eons of travel through the void between stars. These were the guardians left behind by a civilization that had mastered dark matter technology so completely that they had transcended physical existence. They had built these machines to prevent other species from making the same mistakes they had made. Captain Jake Morrison, still aboard the council station as a prisoner, watched through a viewport as the massive constructs surrounded the entire fleet. Alien and human ships alike looked like toys next to these ancient titans. "What are those things?" he asked one of his guards. The crystalline guard's light flickered with what might have been fear. "The predecessors, the first race to achieve galactic civilization. They discovered dark matter technology long before any current species existed, and they learned why it should never be used." One of the Dark Sentinels sent out a transmission that reached every ship in the system. The voice was ancient beyond measure, speaking in harmonics that existed partially in dark matter space. "Dimensional stability breach detected. Dark matter. Manipulation in progress. Initiating containment protocols. All vessels will cease reality distortion activities or face termination." Commander Vextar tried to argue with the ancient construct. "We are the Galactic Council. We have authority in this system. These humans have violated cosmic law." The Dark Sentinel's response was to disable every reality anchor in the fleet with a single pulse of energy. The massive devices simply stopped working, their crystalline cores going dark as their power was drained away. "Dark matter technology detected in 12 human vessels," the Sentinel continued. "Threat level, moderate. Dimensional fractures spreading across local space-time. Initiating emergency repair procedures." Dr. Elena Rodriguez realized what was happening as she watched her instruments detect massive distortions throughout the solar system. The Phantom ships had been punching holes in reality itself every time they phased into dark matter space. The accumulated damage from years of testing and the recent battle was threatening to cause a cascade failure that could destroy entire star systems. "We broke something," she whispered to Nathan. "All those years of testing, all those phase jumps, we've been tearing holes in the fabric of space-time itself." The Dark Sentinels began working to repair the dimensional damage, their ancient technology sealing the cracks in reality that human dark matter experiments had created. But their presence changed everything about the battle. Suddenly, both humans and aliens found themselves facing powers that made their own technology look like stone tools. Major Kate Sullivan, her mind barely holding together, felt something impossible happening. Her consciousness, scattered across multiple realities by the dimensional collapse, was being gathered back together by forces she could not understand. The Dark Sentinels were not just repairing space-time, they were repairing the damage to the Wraith pilots' minds. "I can see them," she whispered, her voice carrying new strength. "The predecessors, they're not gone. They exist in dark matter space, and they're trying to help us understand what we've done." As ancient powers awakened and reality itself became a battlefield, humanity found itself at the center of a cosmic crisis that would determine not just their survival, but the stability of the entire galaxy. The price of their dark matter technology was becoming clear, and it was higher than anyone had ever imagined. The war for human freedom had become something far greater, a struggle between forces that existed beyond normal space and time, with the fate of reality itself hanging in the balance. The Dark Sentinels moved through space like living mountains, their ancient hulls reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed to show the history of the galaxy itself. More of them arrived every hour, emerging from hiding places between the stars where they had waited for 3 million years. Speaker Thexval watched from the council station as his mighty fleets became insignificant next to these cosmic guardians. His crystalline body had lost its bright glow, dimmed by fear and the realization that the Galactic Council was no longer the supreme power in space. "How many of them are there?" he asked his science officer. The floating geometric shape pulsed with nervous energy. "Our sensors detect over 200 Dark Sentinels throughout the galaxy, Speaker. They are converging on every location where dark matter experiments have taken place. Some are heading toward human space, others toward ancient battlefields, where the predecessors once fought. The largest Dark Sentinel, a construct the size of a small moon, positioned itself between the alien fleets and the dying human ghost ships. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons and the wisdom of a civilization that had transcended physical existence. "We are the guardians left behind by those who came before," the ancient machine said. "Our creators discovered the power of dark matter and used it to reshape reality itself. They learned too late that such power comes with a price that threatens all existence." Admiral Lisa Carter, still aboard the council station as part of the human delegation, listened to the Sentinel's words with growing understanding. Humanity had stumbled onto technology that could destroy the universe itself, and they had been using it without knowing the consequences. "The young species called humanity has rediscovered dark matter manipulation," the Sentinel continued. "They have created warriors who exist partially in dark space, but these warriors are burning out their minds and tearing holes in reality. This cannot continue." Major Kate Sullivan, her consciousness barely holding together in the cockpit of her dying ship, felt something impossible happening. The Dark Sentinel's power was reaching into her mind, gathering the scattered pieces of her thoughts and weaving them back together. But instead of returning her to normal human consciousness, something far stranger was occurring. "I can see them," she whispered, her voice carrying across both normal space and dark matter dimensions. "The predecessors. They're still here, existing in dark space. They want to help us understand what we've become." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring from Earth, watched in amazement as Kate's brain patterns stabilized and then evolved into something entirely new. The Wraith pilot was not being healed. She was being transformed into something that could serve as a bridge between human understanding and cosmic forces beyond imagination. Captain Jake Morrison seized this moment of universal crisis to make a desperate proposal. He activated his ship's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every alien vessel, every Dark Sentinel, and every human monitoring station. "This is Captain Morrison of Earth, speaking to all powers present," he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was attempting. "Humanity offers to share all our dark matter research with the Galactic Council and the Dark Sentinels. We propose a joint effort to understand and control this technology safely, in exchange for recognition as an equal member of galactic civilization." The response came from multiple sources simultaneously. Speaker Thexval's crystalline form flared. With indignation, Commander Vextar hissed through his translator, and several other alien leaders began angry protests. But the Dark Sentinel's voice cut through all of them like a blade through silk. "The human proposal has merit," the ancient Guardian announced. "Their species has achieved in decades what took our creators millennia to understand. Their research, combined with our knowledge and the Council's resources, could prevent the dimensional collapse that threatens all reality." Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself at the center of the most important scientific collaboration in galactic history. Within hours, alien scientists were arriving at her underground facility, bringing technologies that made human science look primitive. Feltharian crystal matrices could store dark matter safely, while Zephyrite energy manipulation could stabilize dimensional rifts. Working together, the combined team discovered that humanity's Wraith pilots had become something unique in the galaxy. Their consciousness existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them the perfect intermediaries between normal space and dark matter reality. Major Kate Sullivan became the first human to successfully communicate with the Darks, Sentinels on their own level. Her fragmented mind, scattered across dimensions by dark matter exposure, could understand concepts that existed outside normal space-time. Through her, humanity learned the true history of the galaxy. The predecessors didn't disappear, she explained to the assembled scientists and diplomats. They transcended physical existence and became part of dark matter space itself. They built the Sentinels to prevent other species from making the same mistakes they did. But they've been waiting for a species that could safely bridge both dimensions. The solution that emerged was both tragic and beautiful. The surviving Wraith pilots would merge permanently with the Dark Sentinels, becoming eternal guardians of dimensional stability. Their human perspective and emotional depth would transform the ancient machines from mere protective devices into something approaching true wisdom. "We volunteer," Major Kate Sullivan said, speaking for all the remaining ghost ship pilots. "We gave up our humanity to save our species. Now we'll give up our existence in normal space to save the galaxy itself." Captain Jake Morrison signed the Treaty of Dark Stars aboard the largest Dark Sentinel, with representatives from all 12 Council species watching. The agreement established Earth as the 13th member of the Galactic Council, with full rights and responsibilities. More importantly, it created the first truly cooperative research effort in galactic history, dedicated to understanding and safely using dimensional technology. The ceremony was held in a chamber that existed partially in both normal space and dark matter dimensions. Human delegates stood beside crystalline Veltharians, energy-based Zephyrites, and representatives from species that defied description. Above them all, the transformed Wraith pilots existed as bridges between realities. Their consciousness expanded beyond anything purely human, but retaining the core values that made humanity special. Admiral Lisa Carter accepted command of Terra Station, a joint human-alien facility built around the cosmic coordinates where the first Dark Sentinel had appeared. The station existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, serving as both a research center and a monitoring post for dimensional stability throughout the galaxy. From this day forward, she announced at the station's dedication ceremony, humanity takes its place not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in the greatest endeavor any civilization has ever attempted. We will guard reality itself. The ghost ships were remembered as martyrs who saved not just humanity, but existence itself. Their sacrifice had earned humanity a place among the stars, not through conquest or superior technology, but through their willingness to give everything for both their species and the universe. In the final moments of the ceremony, Dr. Elena Rodriguez received a transmission that seemed to come from the spaces between dimensions. It was Major Kate Sullivan's voice, but changed, expanded, carrying harmonics that existed in dark matter space. "Tell them we found what we were looking for," the voice whispered across realities. "We wanted to reach the stars, and we did. Now, we are the stars, watching over all the children of light who will come after us." Humanity had shocked the galaxy with their dark matter warships, but in the end, they had done something far more impressive. They had transformed a potential cosmic disaster into the foundation for a new age of cooperation and understanding. The species that had been condemned as dangerous primitives had become the guardians of reality itself, their ghost warriors watching over the galaxy from the darkness between the stars. The war was over, but the real adventure was just beginning.